don't name it. It's not a pet, my grandmother said. It's for eat. But of course they named it. Of course my father and his 3 brothers named it. The second they saw this long-necked, bug-eyed baby turkey that with a rope around its neck tied to the kitchen steam pole. The second that they woke up and they saw this in their kitchen, they named it immediately. Señor Pavo! Señor Pavo! Mr. Turkey. Mr. Turkey. It was March of 1944. World War II had been going on for over 4 years, and there had been at least 3 of them since any of the residents of El Barrio and Spanish Harlem had tasted any kind of meat, let alone a turkey. And my grandmother Izzy, was so happy that she finally had the chance of a real American Thanksgiving tied up to her kitchen. Now my grandpa Ezequiel, he was a blackout warden, which means that he was one of the people that were allowed to be out at night because there was a curfew in those days. And he would walk around El Barrio with the flashlight, making sure that people had their blackout curtains drawn, that people, if they were out after curfew, he would go up to them and find out why. And he was basically just like patrolling the streets to make sure that no stray Japs or Nazis would parachute in and blow up El Barrio, because everybody knows that that's what they wanted, right? So on this, somewhere in like at night edge towards gray dawn, in the middle of March, I don't know if it was in a back alley or maybe on Madison Avenue itself, somehow by 106th Street and Madison Avenue, a live turkey pullet somehow fell off the back of a truck and into my grandfather's waiting arms. And my grandma Izzy was just, like I said before, she was just so happy because they came to New York City from Puerto Rico in 1928, which basically makes us Mayflower Puerto Ricans. And in the 60s, serious. It's like, you know how to have the DAR, Dawn of the American Revolution? Like, I'm part of the DARR. I'm the daughter of the Rican Revolution. And for the past 16 years, my grandmother had endured poverty, prejudice, multiple pregnancies, and constantly being told to go back to her own country by the immigrants or the descendants of the immigrants from Italy and Poland and Russia and Ireland, who were too clueless to know that Puerto Rico actually belonged to the United States. So if anything, she had more right to be there than they did. And then there was the family that lived downstairs, those Blanquitos. Those quien que tú crees, who do they think they are, Blanquito? Now, that wasn't really their name. That name has been lost to the ages. But they were the last Irish family living on that block. And they were the downstairs neighbors. And Mrs. Blanquito these stories were told to me. I was not alive in 1944. Mrs. Blanquito was a very clean and cheerful woman, even though she had 9 kids, yes, 9. And her 4 boys didn't really play with my dad and his brothers, but they didn't fight either, which in Spanish Harlem of 1944 was kind of a miracle of itself. And the 9 kids were basically no better or worse behaved than any other group of kids in 1944, but you know, that's be that as it may. And then, the father, Mr. Blanquito, he was a tall guy with like a prominent Adam's apple, as my dad said, and he suffered from sporadic bouts of employment that interrupted his steady job of drinking and disappearing, sometimes for a day or 2 at a time, only to reappear sleeping on the stoop, sprawled out in the staircase, or once or twice even belly up under a tree in Central Park. So yeah, the Blanquitos knew exactly who and what they were. They were a family whose patriarch was too poor, too dumb, and too clueless to get it together and move his family someplace someplace else that wasn't El Barrio, where people didn't complain and stuff. And I can only picture my grandmother talking to Mrs. Blanquito when she was saying, we're going to have some turkey for Thanksgiving. What are you going to have? You know, and she was like, well, you know, I can make like an extra caldera, that's rice and pigeon peas, and I can give you some because your children's like looking mad skinny. Or well, they didn't say mad skinny, but you know, muy flaca. And so, you know, my dad was about to turn 12. His brothers Freddie, Papo, and Junior were 13, 8, and 9. And they didn't know it at the time, but the first operative mission of PETA, 50 years before it was founded, was about to begin. Now, people use the phrase "eat like a bird" to describe someone that just like picks at their food and doesn't really eat a lot. And that could not be further from the truth. Because to eat like an actual bird, that means you have to be constantly shoving some kind of food into your slavering, unceasingly, never satisfied throat. And that's what my dad and his brothers had to do in order to get Mr. Turkey to grow from this like scrawny little pullet to like a size that was going to feed a family of about to be 7, because my grandma was pregnant with her 5th son, but she knows it was going to be a son at the time because they didn't have that testing. But the turkey's got to get big enough to feed a lot of people. That's what I'm saying. And like, where did this endless supply of turkey provender come from? The proud wartime tradition of child labor. My dad and his brothers got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, every morning, and they would trail the ice, rag, knife sharpening, and produce trucks that were horse-drawn again, because the other rationing was tired. They didn't have rubber, so there was no gas, there was no tires, so the horse-drawn carts from like the beginning of the century were back in business. So my dad and his brother would trail these carts with shovels, and they'd shovel up the fresh manure, and they'd put it in bags, and they'd sell it to people using it for their victory gardens. The victory gardens were gardens that were like on every available lot, fire escape, windowsill, roof hole, wherever. Because like I said, when you're basically living on a diet of rice and beans all the time, having a fresh tomato in August is such a treat. So like they made my bank, whatever bank was in those days, like they made 15 cents, whatever. But like they would sell it, and then after school, they would scour the streets again for tin foil, another valuable commodity that was generously supplied by the greatest generation's chain smokers and gum chewers. So spring turns to summer, summer turns to autumn. Franklin Delano Roosevelt got elected to an unprecedented 4th term, and Senor Pavo had blossomed into this big Tom. And my dad and his brothers would like hand feed him and pet him, and they would take turns singing to him. ¿Qué dice Señor Pablo? Google, google, google. Mañana es el día por las gracias. Google, google, google. What does Mr. Turkey say? Gobble, gobble, gobble. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving Day. Gobble, gobble, gobble. But whatever Señor Pablo saw my grandma Izzy walk by, he would leap up and try to nip any body part that he could reach. And finally, it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I can only imagine my grandma Izzy whetting her long knife as she berated these boys for naming her dinner. Mira, Señor Pablo, he going tomorrow. I told you not to name him. And I could only imagine the innocent tears of my dad and his brothers as they climbed into their shared bed. And I could only imagine my grandmother's dreams, sweet dreams of comeuppance and breast meat, as she paraded that turkey in front of the blanquitos. That's what you get for telling me to go back to my country. My dad would tell me this story 3 times, the last a month before he died. He told me that he woke him in the middle of that night, breathless, with this like a tight chest and this nameless fear he didn't know. He's 12. So he goes into the kitchen to get a glass of milk, and he opens the icebox. And the light from the icebox casts a glow onto Mr. Turkey's eyes. Senor Pablo was just like there. And he leans down, he said to me, he went to pet him one last time, and he started singing. What does Mr. Turkey say? Gobble, gobble, gobble. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. My father told me that he brushed the leaves from his bare feet as he climbed back into bed. When he woke up the next morning to the sound of my grandmother screaming and giving all the brothers in a row cocotazos, which is the knuckle, on the back of the head, he knew he would be next, but he didn't care. My grandpa Ezekiel found out that my grandma Izzy had woken up to a nightmare that morning when the empty rope was coiled next to the steam pipe, and Mr. Pavo was gone. And my grandfather was just like, Hurricane Izzy was going around the kitchen wielding the chancleta and the plancha, the iron cord, trying to hit whoever she could reach. And my grandpa was just like, stop, Izzy, there's nothing we can do. Just settle down and make an extra caldero of arroz con gandules for those poor starving children downstairs. So my grandma resigned herself to yet another holiday in America, cold and hungry without meat, and as she's making this other pot of rice and beans, I can only imagine what went through her head as the unmistakable smell of roast beef started wafting up the stairs. You see, because as Mr. Blanquito would say it later, he got a true miracle on 106th Street. As he woke up from his latest 2-day bender on the stoop, he saw a turkey sitting next to him. And Mr. Papa, who had been hand-fed and adored by his handlers, didn't even squawk as he picked him up and carried him inside. He actually said that he thought that it was a vision from the Virgin Mary or something like it. I cannot tell you if Senor Papa was silent when the knife fell. So my grandma Izzy felt that smell of roast beef down the stairs, and I can only imagine what happened next between two cultures whose love of language and confrontation had to say to each other. I could only imagine the insults and the slurs and the accusations until finally cooler heads prevailed because they realized that there was a war going on and they were each just a family trying to get along and live the best they could. So on that fourth Thursday of Thanksgiving in 1944, my grandmother went upstairs and brought down her 2 calderos, or 2 stew pots of arroz con gandules, and 18 people sat in the Blanquito's house and gave thanks for Senor Pavo. And did they all eat it? Of course they ate it. There was no complaining about gluten and food allergies and no fat. It wasn't organic. There was a fucking war going on. That thing was gone in a half an hour. And as Betty Blanquito, as 11-year-old Betty Blanquito sat like sucking the marrow out of a drumstick and inhaling my grandma, because my grandma made some damn slime arroz con gandules. Let me tell you, I missed them. I missed you, Izzy. So anyway, she's listening, she's batting her long eyelashes of her big green eyes, listening to my dad telling the story. Oh, I didn't even tell my dad's name. His dad is Rodolfo, his name is Rodolfo Valentino. He was named after the silent film star, but don't ever call him anything but Rudy. So she was listening to Rudy tell again and again the story of the heroic liberation and sacrifice of Senor Pavo. And, Mr. Blanquito, after telling everybody how he just saw God, he had this miraculous conversion, and he managed to stay off the sauce for the next year. And soon his family moved over to Pleasant Avenue, as far away from El Barrio Spanish Harlem as you could get, and still be in Manhattan in those days. And as for Betty Blanquito and my dad Rudy, well, they kind of kept company on what they used to call company back in the day, on and off for the next 8 years, until one day my dad looked out his kitchen window and he saw my mom. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.